see this here. Oh, hey, give me a second real quick. Okay, now we'll just go do this. Perfect. And let's call that done. All right. Hey, so my name is Cade Knessa, and I'm a freelance filmmaker, or whatever you want to call it, really. I do quite a bit of one-man band jobs here in Connecticut while working on some sets here and there. Now, I'll take this opportunity to go over my color grading process in using some projects like the one I just finished here. Let me just start by saying, in today's day and age where we have the cleanest sensors, the sharpest lenses, that we kind of want to escape from those very clinical, digital look that you kind of get from Netflix right now. I, for one, crave the character and texture in frames they kind of get from the old and vintage, and sort of the imperfections, and that's kind of why I've driven more towards the anamorphic and stuff like that, because those imperfections are really what pop and kind of stand out from what I just mentioned, being the clinical, the very digital looks that you see today. With that said, I lean towards some of my favorite movies like Oppenheimer, The Batman, Dune, and La La Land, seeking that sort of grunge texture and dirtiness that you just get from those frames. These movies all have a unique look that film provides, and I've kind of tinkered with it a little bit and kind of landed on something that looks something like this. It's not perfect, but hey, it's just something that I've kind of found along the way that is getting that vibe that I'm going for, really. Oftentimes, when I work on my personal projects and I have the creative freedom to really dive into the color grade and make it as specific as I want, I try and incorporate something like from these films, adding that texture, that that grunge and the dirtiness. Now, I will say I have had luck using Dehancer, and I've gotten people complimenting my color grading. Like some of the friends I work with, they say that my color grading is like always on point, or the color grade looks so good. And I mean, I don't think it's anything special really. Like I know there's areas that I can improve on. I am by no means like a professional colorist or anything like that. So I mean, I appreciate when they say it, but I mean, there's others out there who are doing so much better than me. So that's why I was surprised when Dehancer reached out, wanting to kind of work together and collaborate. They asked me to provide an honest review or tutorial, and that's kind of what I'm going to be going over in this video. It's just kind of how I use their product in my videos, for example. To give you some disclosure as well, when they reached out to me in the email, they mentioned that if I were to do this, I would get a free license and an affiliate link. Now, I will say, I started using Dehancer about a year ago, and I got it for myself for Final Cut. I'm now taking a look at switching over to DaVinci Resolve, and with that, I kind of want to use Dehancer again. So keep in mind, I did buy Dehancer Pro myself, that's the full version. I just like the way that Dehancer lays everything out and how you can kind of just fiddle with it. Don't take my word for it though. I would implore you to just go on Dehancer, download the free trial. I think it's about 2 weeks or so, and that will kind of help you dive into the platform, figure it out, and see what works for you, see if you like it. I know it was extremely helpful for me because that helped me make my decision and be like, okay, yeah, this is something that I would want, because it helped me tremendously with figuring out, okay, is this something that I actually need, or is this a beneficial tool that can provide value to me? And at the time, I thought it was. I think it still is, because I'm wanting to get it for DaVinci. In doing this review, I would be getting a free license, perhaps. I mean, I may not. They might look at this, say they don't like it, and not give it to me. That's fine. I mean, I bought it myself for Final Cut. That's kind of how I've used it. Going forward, I'd probably get it for DaVinci myself anyway. So if they give me a free license, I mean, I would very much appreciate it, but just for full disclosure, you guys know that. On top of that, they'd be giving me an affiliate link as well. I thought it'd be a fun learning experience to kind of go over my past travel films and how I made them utilizing Dehancer. So let's take a look. My grading process has really evolved from over the years using Dehancer and whatnot. I first started out using Dehancer on my Banff travel video here. I'll go over that first, as that's kind of just a base starting point. I'll kind of give you guys some of my experience using Dehancer in this video. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the full project file anymore. As you can see here, I just have the final video. So we're just going to work through that. All the other ones, I've got the full projects listed and everything with cuts and whatnot, so we can really dive into it. You'll notice I'm actually over here on this side, so I do have the final project, so we can actually go in and take a look at Dehancer on the right hand side here to see what I did. But to start off with, let's say here, just kind of an opening shot. What I want to do here too with this is kind of color grade it. I didn't want to bring down the tones so much because it's a really beautiful place. If you haven't been to Banff, I would highly recommend it because it was just so surreal, especially getting there early in the morning, like before even sunrise, and it being so quiet because no one else is really there, especially for Lake Louise. It was incredible, I do have to say. But I really wanted to make these colors pop as much as possible. So I kind of got inspired by movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, where I saw behind the scenes where they really wanted to do justice to the environments they were filming in because it was shot on location. It wasn't like on some sort of like green screen or anything like that. So they really wanted to amp that up, or make it as realistic as possible. And that's kind of what I did here, as well as I didn't want to kind of desaturate the tones, and be as stylistic as I have become, because I really want to do justice to the location. Because I mean, like, some of these shots are just so cool to see. I did use a Kodak 2383 print film, as you can see here, for the entirety of this film. Something else that I did as well is I used the built-in kind of input source, choosing your own camera and whatnot. I think I've updated Dehancer, so it did kind of just default this because I did use the FX3 for this. So you can see there's a whole slew of just cameras here. So I used the FX3. Shot that in S-Gamma3.cine. But that's something you can do. I've kind of avoided using this now going forward just because I don't like it as much. I find like I really like to use all this stuff up here within Final Cut. Now going forward in DaVinci, that might change, and I'll see with that. But on that note, I don't use it as much. I just have it set to, the Rec 709, doing nothing. But I do sometimes make temperature and tint adjustments because that helps me kind of get the color in a better spot than I could do with like the color wheels up here, for example. I think I was able to get some pretty cool shots from it. I brought my gimbal and everything, but when looking at the actual color grade, I will say this was a tough shot for me to grade, actually, because the shadows were just so tricky, especially with the exterior out here. Like, there's no windows or tent or anything, so trying to bring all of this and make it seen while not having things lost in the shadow, I think I did a good job with it back in the time. There's probably things I could do better now, going forward, for sure, but when I color grade, I try not to make everything at 0. I try and keep it at 5. That's kind of how I get some more of the detail in the shadows here, especially, while keeping it the highlights under 100. I won't stay on this too long just because I don't have the working project file for this. Okay, here's an example of like trying to keep it true to the actual like colors and everything in Banff. So, the water is very blue. The sun was just hitting this greenery perfectly, and I was like, okay, let's just try and do this as much justice as possible. And I mean, in using Dehancer, I was really able to pull that out and kind of get that kind of film look I was going for, minus, say, the grain and all that, but just kind of really pulling out those colors and those pops. And I think that's where the color density really comes in handy. I just love how the color grading turned out, and it was really fun to just kind of play around with Dehancer, because this is, I think, was one of my first projects I really used Dehancer with, and I just absolutely loved kind of working all of that together and just grading this project in its entirety. So for the Banff travel video, I think it's kind of a good concept to show like what I was able to do with it. Now, I've definitely learned a lot more since then, becoming a little bit more stylized. But let's go into some of the other travel videos, because I think those will do more justice to Dehancer and kind of give it to you there. But I just wanted to show Banff because that allowed me to, it was really my first hands-on experience in using Dehancer, and I thought it turned out really well. So I was like, might as well just show you guys. So let's hop over to that. For this Greece travel film, I really wanted to emulate the style of Dune, so kind of getting those desaturated warmer tones. So this is the start of the little travel film that I did. And here you can see on the right side that I start off with, I'm using just an FX3 conversion with Dehancer. Although this was a drone, just to have everything look consistent, I incorporated this into it. This was a tricky shot because it was with the drone, so grading it was a bit more difficult than just using the FX3, which I've got like my own workarounds for and all that. One of my favorite things to use, I will say, is this this kind of film profile thing. I really like using the Kodak Vision 350D, and you can kind of see what that does is it brings down the tones, and essentially from, I mean, what I know is like, this says here is like a push and a pull for, I think this is exposure, the EV. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I'm not a professional colorist, but I really like what this does. I think this is essentially treated as, say, the negatives. So how long it takes for the film to be processed. Like if you do it shorter, then I think it'd be something like this. If you were to do it longer in like the dark rooms and whatnot, that's kind of the photochemical process that it tries to emulate. And you can see kind of why I went with the overexposed by 2, because I really like what it does to the shadows. It really like warmthens them up quite a bit, specifically for this project. I mean, some of them I do go towards like the -2, or sometimes I just leave it at 0 because it does a pretty good job. And you can kind of see it does bring down the highlights. It brings down a lot, but it still allows you to have good retention of the image. This is a shot that I think is really cool in how it turned out. I've got the contrast there. I've got the grain and everything too, especially because it only plays in the highlights. So for like down here, you don't really see any of the grain kind of moving unless it's on the highlights, or unless it's in the brighter parts of the image, whereas the shadows kind of don't have as much. And that's something that I used quite a bit here. On this project too, I also added halation and bloom. I think for most of my projects now, I just add that. It's good because if you want it, you can add it. Whereas if you have a filter that you just put on the front of your lens, you can't really take that off or get rid of it. Like if I were to have a Promise filter on this camera here, you wouldn't be able to get rid of that exactly or easily per se. Whereas using Dehancer, it's a simple, just like, okay, let's take off the bloom of here. You can see kind of what it does around the highlights, especially. But you can add it and take it off, or you can even change the intensity. I really like the 70mm, just from, you know, as I was saying earlier with Oppenheimer, that's kind of how that got added in. But you've got plenty of options here to choose from. You can even do custom like I do for the grain. It's just not something that I want to bother with as much. I think these work fine. They play well. The halation does a fantastic job, I think. It does something too, which is weird, which is it changes. I don't know if you saw that, but the color cast of the entire image, especially the highlights, it makes it, I think, a little bit more magenta or warmer. You can really see in the sky how it's kind of changing that and desaturating the blues as well. But I like what it does overall to the image. It just plays better, I think. This was also just me on my travels getting stuff without any production or anything like that. So, you know, just an FX3 and running and gunning or stuff. So I'm happy with how all these turned out. For example, let's see here. You know, they've got you can see they usually have their IREs around 70 for movies in terms of the highlights. That's something that I was being a little bit more punchy with here because I like the contrast. Don't get me wrong, this looks good here, especially all the detail in the shadows and whatnot. I don't mind crushing the blacks a little bit just to have some frames. Like, as you can see here, I'm editing on an OLED display. So with that, I kind of have the ability to see, okay, what is exactly crushed and what isn't crushed. Because otherwise, yeah, with the OLED, it would be completely black. So that's why I really do use the waveform a lot, and that's why I have it set to the 5, because it's like, okay, I want most of my blacks to live there. I'm fine with some things touching in the zeros if everything else kind of lives at the 5 RE level. How I graded this was, here, I'll show you here, using the source of the grading for the camera within Dehancer, adding a little bit of green to the image to kind of match what we saw in this Dune one, in this Dune frame. Bring up the blacks a tad. Usually I like to keep them around 2, 2 or 0. Anything other than that, at least back here for when I was editing. When we go into Azores in the next one, I really brought these up quite a bit because I was diving more into like the color grade and figuring out how much I could bring the edit together or without breaking it. So like bring it to the point of breaking, and then okay, dial that back and figure out this is a point where I'm acceptable with how the look actually goes for the frames and having that cohesiveness. So this is somewhere where in the whites, I could bring this down to say like the 75 IRE level, but it kind of looks a little bit muddy to me, I think, especially in terms of in the highlights. I don't think it looks particularly good. And I mean, that's something I've learned a little bit more on, but with the way that I was editing back then, it was, okay, this is how I knew how to make it look. As you can see, again, using Kodak 2383, bring the target white all the way up. I never touch exposure because I either do that within the actual color wheels. So saturation color density here, I think works out very well because without it, it tends flat, but it really brings the skin tones some more of that richness and kind of gives more depth, I would say, to the colors without increasing the saturation. So what you see here is, these oranges look very blah. But when I add it in, it kind of deepens those colors without making them super, super bright. Now I know I may have decreased, for this, I definitely decreased the saturation of everything, but that kind of brings it back. And I mean, color density is one of my most favorite things to use in Dehancer paired with the film grain. Another thing to it that I use here as well is, as you see, the Kodak Vision 350D, and it just kind of softens everything up. Oh, you can see without any push or pull, it really softens it up, and I'm able to get that look that you see here. At least I feel what resembles it. Here's where I can actually show you the color head when I was talking about Banff earlier. So in Banff, I use it a little bit. And I said I've kind of gone away from it a little bit. I've kind of gone away from it too. And this checks out as what I'm showing you here. I bring the shadows all the way up to 100 because otherwise without it, I feel like that just looks way too blue. So bring the shadows to 100 for the tone. Bring the highlight tone down. And what that enables me to do is, if it were to be 0, things will look a little too orange. So I bring it down a little bit to kind of fine tune that white balance and make sure that everything is looking as it should, or at least in my eyes, how it should. So you don't have anything that's, so preposterously like orange and it's like, okay, well, that's just not really realistic, I would say. Whereas something in the -5 world here, that's actually white. Those boats are white, and that resembles white without making it super, super stylized. This was one of my favorite shots of the entire film, actually. So I do want to go over this. This was here. I'll show you without anything. This was at sunset, and I actually got a little bit of a flare that you can see here when I actually bring it out. The color contrast is amazing for sure. I think you can actually see some halation too from the mask, what it's doing. If let's see, increase this. Let's go in even further and enhance this Dehancer. you can see what the halation is doing. And yeah, it's just what I was saying was it adds that red rim to the like outside fringes of like where there's highlights or something like that that has that film look. You can also see here when we're zoomed in, just the grain, if I take that off, as clean as a whistle really. So adding this in just adds that texture that I'm talking about that really helps the image to really stand out. It's not like, okay, let's just use the film halation and bloom. There's a lot more at play, especially like the color density. So if I were to take this off, you'll notice that the oranges get a little bit less desaturated, whereas adding it in just fills it in a little bit more. Especially you can see in the sail, it just really captures that light from the sunset. And I think it plays extremely well. I mean, sure, I could go ahead and just not add any of this stuff, but when I do that, it doesn't have that feel for me that just grips me. For example, I actually just finished Breaking Bad recently, and when comparing it to things like the Ozarks, which is kind of similar in the realm or like the atmosphere of the movie and kind of what they're all about, I noticed that I really liked Breaking Bad more because of like the texture of the world. You've got that grain. It's just so gritty. But when you look at something like Ozark next to it, Ozark just looks so clinical and clean. Obviously, there's different strokes for different folks, but me personally, I just loved the world building of Breaking Bad, having the grittiness to it with the grain. And that's something that I really like adding to my films as well, is just giving it that little something extra that sets it apart from what everyone's kind of demanding nowadays, which is that very clean and clinical look. So I mean, I enjoy seeing it. I know not every client does, but when I can put it in, I really enjoy using it because it makes me feel better about my products and what I'm putting out, because I can make it mine. Let's take a look at the last one, which is Azores, which is one that I just put out recently, and I am actually very proud of. It's a different style from what I have been doing in the past, which is I try to incorporate poems. Not that that matters to any of this, but just kind of adding in that sort of aspect with vocals and everything, and making it less of a story per se, but more of just like a video postcard where it's just showing shots that I got. I mean, I wasn't trying to get everything special. I know for Banff and Greece, Banff was like one of our first time. It was our first time going, but it was also my first time making a video. So I wanted to make it perfect. For Greece, I went with my girlfriend's parents, and I wanted to be able to make a video for them that they would be able to remember and enjoy. And so those were very like story centric, I'd say, because for Banff, that was first day Lake Louise, second day Moraine Lake, third day was kind of like Icefields Parkway. That's how I segmented it out. For Greece, it was kind of Athens, Naxos, and Santorini. I split each of those three locations up into different parts for the trip and the edit, actually. Whereas with Azores here, I made it more of a video postcard, so it's just shots throughout the trip. And I mean, I did segment it into three by just poem, but they really were just part of the trip. Something else too here that I want to point out as well is borrowed a little bit from Dune and watching like the editing podcast. When they show the subtitles on the screen, they don't want you to read them. They want you to like hear what's being said and then see what is being said. And that's something that I was like, I didn't actually think of that. So I wanted to try and implement that here. So I did it to the best of my ability. So if you take a look at the final film, you'll be able to see kind of how that worked out. Now that was just a long tangent. So let's get back into like my color grading and how I kind of went about that. For this grading, this is one where it was my most recent, as I just said, and it's probably my most up-to-date way of using Dehancer, but I didn't use any of the coloring from within Dehancer for like the color space transform or anything like that. What I did do, however, was I used essentially every shot except for the drone footage, or like this one didn't really benefit from. I used Kodak Vision 3 50D for all of the shots. It gave it more style, and we'll kind of run through this later and you'll see what that did. Film compression I used on shots where there were highlights, and I'll kind of go over that a little bit more to bring down the highlights, or essentially like treat it like dehaze a little bit in Lightroom. Expand, as I said, within two for the black point. And here's where I've really developed. I didn't use Kodak 2383. What I did was, because I kind of had a lot that I was using because I just wanted to try it out and see how it would work, I set the profile to linear without the analog range limiter. And in doing so, I just played around with the contrast and the color density. But using it this way, I was able to kind of get more of the look that I think I've been trying to go for lately. But while still using the suite of Dehancer. You know, I've switched over to the 70mm for the film grain entirely to match the halation and the bloom. So if we look at this shot here, I'll show you the before of it. So this was in the plane on my way back. So the shot's not as good. Just because that's from the plane. You can see there's these ugly artifacts from the plane's window where it's got like the green, the purple to the like yellow green again, that kind of rainbow effect on the window. That doesn't matter though. So what I ended up doing was kind of playing around, taking out those highlights, making it so that's where this this black point comes in handy, is making it so those blacks are kind of in their deepest blacks, but you're still able to see some of the detail. You know, this was a very early morning as well. So just getting the light hitting this little town here, I thought was really, really cool. Especially considering, like, as it pans up, you see the light kind of dancing across the sky in the frame here. And that's kind of why I put it with this opener of the poem, as you can see. Here you can tell it's definitely stylized quite a bit. I've got the Kodak Vision 3 going full blast. Without it, this is how I had it graded before, and I was like, let me try this out and see how I like it. And I think this is fine, but it's like, it looks a little bit too saturated for me, too kind of cartoony, in terms of, you know, what you would see with if you were actually there. And I didn't want to be as Pirates-esque as my Banff one. So I was like, let's throw this on and see how it looks. I did it, and I immediately loved what it did. Like, it kind of darkened the shadows a little bit more, made like the midtones area here more desirable, I think, as well. Black point I set to 0, but this is where I really dove in and kind of played in with it a little bit more. So I did, as I mentioned earlier, I set the print profile to linear. It really allowed me to get the color density to a point where I liked, as well as playing around with the tonal contrast, which is something that I think is so good for the software, because what it does is it allows you to get more contrast out of the frame. And that's something that I had been struggling with in my last travel films. It's like, okay, how do I get this to look more contrasty? While still retaining the looks of that Dehancer has to offer. And this, I found, was the best way for me to do it. This is where this the film compression came in handy, because without it, it kind of makes this look not as, I mean, the middle section here, you can see my mouse. It makes this middle section look very blah, So what I was able to do, especially because there weren't any skin tones or any people in it, as a center point, adding in that film compression and getting that impact down allowed me to kind of pull more of that contrast in, especially deeper in the frame, kind of like how dehaze works, as I was saying earlier. Um, you can tell it just gives it some more depth, as well as like adding in that contrast to the highlights. Now, I don't know exactly what the film compression does. I believe I've said that already, but in my experience, like just using that helps for, when you've got shots that aren't playing how I like them to. So adding it in allows me to bring in some more of that color just by having it, because I think it kind of brings it down as its own mask, really. But something else I did here too was that I didn't talk about in the other ones, was the vignetting. I played around with this quite a bit because I was like, okay, the main center point here should be kind of like what you see in front of you. If I take this off, I think it's not super distracting, but what I had on here was a wide angle adapter on an anamorphic lens. And that's kind of what you're seeing with this character on the edge, how it's like super like zoom or warped, or kind of like the light speed sort of effect, where it's kind of pulling your eye towards the center. Similar to kind of like the look with the Batman, which is, one of my favorite films from a cinematography perspective as well. And that's why I wanted to test this out and see like, okay, how does it play? It gave my anamorphic lens a little bit more, a wider field of view, while also having that extra character, because I'm using the Blazar Remus, and, those already have some more character than people typically like, but I am all for it. So adding that wide angle adapter onto the front really made it show even more character that I'm kind of going for, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, where, that's something that I'm craving. I want that, because it just makes an image stand out. Like you get this bleed effect with the blur and everything, and I think it just looks so much better, and just kind of toying around them with that and seeing it, because I didn't do that with all the shots, but if I wanted to get a wider field of view or kind of have that effect, I'll get later on to one of my favorite shots in this travel film, and I use that adapter with the lens, and I think it just looks so good, and it's just something you don't see nowadays. With that said, this is kind of what I've found works extremely well in terms of coloring for projects going forward. Now, something else that I wanted to mention too is with this Azores trip, I had something in mind. I had this idea going before we even had the trip to plan, really. Like when we mentioned we want to go to Azores, I was like, okay, I've got some shots that I think I would want to get. I wanted to kind of not replicate, but emulate some of the shots from the creator. And with that, I just liked the greens that they had. Just using the actual location. I mean, they also used an FX3, not that that matters or anything, but just using the location and seeing what they were able to get without really any lights per se. I mean, I know they used lights and everything, but just to see what I could get and try and make it as similar as possible. I mean, as you can see, they've got loads of grain here. And I was like, okay, let's just pump that up. That's why I switched from my custom film grain to the just 70mm one, because I was like, okay, let's just chuck it in and make this look more like, I guess, a movie, if you will, but giving it those film-like qualities. So that's something, as we go throughout this, you'll see a little bit more of, especially pulling from shots like this, just having that glow of the sun and everything, and yeah, just like the greens and all that. So just looking through these, this is kind of the look, the style that I was going for when I was coloring the travel film, and what I had in mind, months in advance before we actually went here. So back to this shot, you can kind of see how this is playing out, just using the natural location, the natural sunlight and everything. I mean, that's where the FX3 came in handy, because I'm pretty sure this was shot at 12,800 ISO. Here you can see the halation for sure. So if you look at the plant here in the middle left of frame, if you look at the edges of it, you can really see how the halation is affecting the blades there, where it's just got like that, I guess, chromatic aberration that is added because of the halation here. So if I don't want that, I could get rid of it pretty easily. Same with bloom. Just like, okay, without having to have a filter screwed on or anything, it's like, okay, I can just add that if I want it. And same with the grain as well. It's just like, okay, clean image or add in some grain. And what you'll notice too is, especially, the grain helps with skies so much. You can see here on the IRE, it's very like flat, but when you add in the film grain, it kind of divvies this up and makes the range of the highlights a little bit more sporadic as the grain just kind of goes across. Oh yeah, and then like here you can see as well, using the color density, that really brings out the orange of the sky, because without it, you kind of lose that detail. Whereas if you add it in, it just brings it out a little bit more, and you can see some more of the remjet rim along these rocks here. Here's another one of my probably favorite shots from the film. This I just stopped off on the side of the road, but you've got the film grain going on with flags flapping in the wind. The halation really helps add the on the left side of the frame here. It adds that rim to the flags, as well as making the highlights just a little bit more red. But I mean, I just look at this and I'm like, I like what this does, because, okay, so if I take this off now, since I'm not using Dehancer to get the base grade for it, you can kind of see what it does. So this is, kind of very clinical, but adding this in, it just, I think, builds atmosphere to the image, to the frames of this film and everything. I just like what this does. It does everything that I want it to, and that's why I got Dehancer. So this shot was, as I was mentioning, has that wide angle adapter on the anamorphic lens. Something else I want to bring out on it too is, I know when they were talking about the creator and how they kind of filmed it, was they tried to go for the widest aspect ratio possible, because they shot these on like 2x anamorphic lenses, and the FX3 is a 16:9 sensor. So the image is super stretched out. What I ended up doing here was something similar. I had a 1.5 D-squeeze image, but instead of making a 2.4:1 aspect ratio, I just was like, okay, let's just do the entirety of the image. So as you'll notice, like, this is far wider in terms of the aspect ratio than the other ones, because the other travel films were 2.4:1. What that does is it, instead of taking off, like, say, the 10% of the image because of the 2.4:1 crop, you see some more of that character, especially with the wide angle adapter on it. You get more of that just blur that really pulls your eye to the center of the frame. I mean, you can see it over here too. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I've got these tools, I've got an anamorphic lens that helps me kind of get some of that character that I'm going for. The wide angle adapter that accentuates that and is able to allow me to play around with the image to get it looking in a way that I like, similar to the Batman, how they had those detuned. Like, that's essentially what that does for me. The wide angle adapter is, it gives me that. And I would say the third thing that helps me out quite a bit there is Dehancer. Like, it's another tool that just helps me get my projects looking the way that I want them to. Adding the film profile codec Vision 350D, it just makes the image look so much better to me. This is close to what it was before, but adding on this profile, I think, just deepens the image and makes it look more convincing, more pleasing to the eye, at least for me. That's kind of what I'm going for when I'm creating these, is making something that I'm happy with. And I think I've gotten to a point now with Dehancer where I can make something look really good by just using their software pretty easily. I mean, you can see from the past ones that I've definitely grown. I would use the phantom LUTs here and there, but I couldn't ever really get it to look how it would on the screen when I was actually filming. They're still good. I use them as my my display LUTs, like my monitoring LUT for when I'm filming in S-Log. So as we go through these, you can kind of see that I was able to get this all super stylized and just in a spot that I was extremely happy with. I don't know if I probably could have done this without Dehancer, but it just has all the tools right there that I need. So it allows me to get what I'm going for in a very easy way by just like clicking and adding on what I want and being able to change them. But yeah, I mean, I would say color density is something very huge that I enjoy using quite a bit. Especially the film compression, as you can see here, just helps to get that extra contrast, which is what I'm looking for in my films. Getting that that grunginess, the dirtiness of the frame, and all that. I mean, it's just a fun product that I enjoy experimenting with and learning how to use because. So I just wanted to show you guys my color grading process on this to show like how this tool benefits me, similar to the lenses that we use, the cameras that we use. So I just thought it'd be helpful because I do have other people talking to me and saying like, oh wow, like your stuff looks good. And I'm like, I appreciate it very much. But I think there's ways that I can improve, and if I can help anyone else improve, I would say like, Dehancer is a great way to do that. You know, they've got the free trial that I mentioned earlier. Definitely go and try that out if you're at all interested, and yeah, give it a shot for yourself. Play around, and you'll be able to create some super cool stuff like I've been able to do over the past few years. And I'm pretty happy with it. As I've said, you know, I mean, I've paid for it myself, and I enjoy using it. It helps me tell my stories in ways that I think work extremely well. So there you have it. That's my entire process for color grading using Dehancer to just kind of get that extra little bit, that punch out of the images that I'm looking for. Oh, also, if you're interested in watching any of these travel films, I'll link their playlist in the description below where you can go and check them out. With that said, all I can say is thank you for watching this. I hope this helped you in some way, and I'll see you guys in the next one.